Hey kids, how's it going? Welcome to Idiot versus Point Spread. I'm your host, the Idiot. First of all, just want to say thanks for checking this out. This is the first video of what will hopefully be a prosperous new series here on YouTube. Before I get into the actual content here, I just figured I'd have like a little bit of a summary or a synopsis of exactly why I'm doing this. I've been a football fan, an NFL fan for a very, very long time, over 20 years. I study it. I watch like a ton of it. I almost call it like I need my fix sometimes. We're a month away from the NFL season right now, and obviously excitement is high, anticipation is high. I've been looking to do some sort of, like a podcast or something of this nature for quite a while. I wasn't 100% sure exactly how I wanted to go about it or, what I wanted to cover. As we got closer and closer to football season, I really started to get excited, and I really wanted to talk about it. And I thought this would be, a good avenue to explore that, talk about football more, and maybe even, spread a little bit of knowledge and whatnot. I do consider myself, clearly I'm no expert on TV or anything like that, but I do follow football a lot closer than the average football fan, I would say. And it's something I consider myself to be quite knowledgeable about, so really it took me a while for this thought process to come together, but now that I'm doing it, it makes a lot of sense to me. The other reason I wanted to do this is to educate on gambling and the dangers of it. Like I said, I consider myself to be quite knowledgeable on football, and when I bet on football, I am not very good at it. I have usually, a well thought out argument as to why I think the things that I do. In the NFL nowadays, mostly due to how thin the talent margin is from team to team. It's a salary cap league. It's a complete crapshoot to bet on most of the time. So for people like me who think they know a lot about football, I think over the coming weeks and months you're going to find out that even if you know a lot, you're probably going to lose some money. And then if you're somebody who doesn't know a lot about football, your chances of winning betting on the NFL are pretty much just as good as somebody who knows a lot. So we're gonna be exploring that. I mean, the title of the show is Idiot versus Point Spread, so obviously I'm going to be making a lot of picks week to week based on point spreads. So yeah, it's going to be a fun adventure, I think. Just doing this on my computer. We're definitely coming from some humble beginnings here. So I'm hoping over time, as things grow, and if people are into this, or even if you like really hate it and want to have like hate comments, that's cool too. Hopefully the show will grow in terms of production as it grows in terms of a fan base and an audience. So with that in mind, we're a month away from the NFL season. So I can't really, I could pick some preseason games, but when I say picking games in the NFL is a crapshoot, picking games in the preseason is a fucking crapshoot. There's no rhyme or reason to it. You're really going with a lot less knowledge of the players unless you're watching football all the way down to like Division III college football. You're getting a lot of guys who aren't going to have careers in pro football playing, in football games. So although there are preseason lines, I'm certainly not going to be touching any of those. But with a month to go until the regular season starts, I thought we could look at some win total over and under projections. What a win total projection is basically set by the various casinos and sports books, mostly in Vegas, and it tells you, it basically says, like, how many games out of 16, once it's a 16-game season in the NFL, how many games Vegas thinks each team is going to win. And then you or me, as a gambler, we can, bet the over or the under. So say Vegas sets an 8-win total for a team, and you think they're going to be quite good, you're probably going to want to be betting over that 8-win total. Whereas if you think they're going to have a bad season, you're going to want to bet the under. So with that in mind, we're going to start this week. I'm going to go through the AFC East and the AFC North. So let's just get started with the AFC East, dive into some of these win totals, and see what we think. Just going to point out real quick that we're getting our projected win totals from the Westgate Sportsbook in Las Vegas. And they are pretty up-to-date numbers. So we are going to start with New England, which I think is probably the most logical place to start because they're the defending Super Bowl champions, the most popular team in the NFL. They have the most haters, of course, but, in terms of fan support, they're the most popular team. At least I would think they are. I guess maybe you could make an argument for Dallas or something. But anyways, moving on. 11 wins. So when you look at New England's record over the last, many, many years, the last time that New England won less than 11 games was 2009. They're in the Super Bowl, feels like every year. So off the top, you would think that 11 is probably a low number. But when you go into some of the details of the Patriots' offseason, I feel like that you can actually craft an argument for the under. The big argument to this would, to me anyway, is the losses that were suffered over the offseason. I'm not going to go through every single one. I find it would probably be a bit tedious to go through every addition and subtraction since there is so much turnover year to year in an NFL offseason. The big three losses, I'm sure most people have heard of the retirement of Rob Gronkowski. And they also lost their starting left tackle last year, Trent Brown, to the Raiders. He signed a huge deal. And their number one pass rusher, Trey Flowers, who signed with Detroit. When you look at what has been done to kind of mitigate these losses, on paper, I don't really see where a lot of the production, especially on offense, is going to be made up. You've got N'Keal Harry, was a rookie out of Arizona State, I believe. And you've also got an aging Demaryius Thomas signed as a free agent coming in to hopefully mitigate some of the production loss from Gronkowski. Chris Hogan also left. That's, it's a smaller hole to replace. But I don't really feel that they have made the proper moves, on paper at least, to justify that the offense is going to be any better. Brady, of course, is getting older every year, and although that never seems to matter, you're really going into uncharted territory in terms of a quarterback playing at this high of a level this late into his career. So, one of these years it's going to happen. Could it be this year? I don't know. I'm probably, though, to be completely honest with you, I'd pick the over. This team hasn't lost 6 games in a season since 2009. They have easily the smartest coach. I'd put him against anybody. I get maybe Bill Walsh, coach those legendary Niners teams, but I would put Belichick basically on a pedestal in terms of football intelligence. This guy, every year, he seems to just keep going on. I mean, this isn't a new thing where New England has lost guys after a Super Bowl season that signed big contracts with another team in the offseason. And they always consistently just seem to be able to keep the machine rolling as long as they've got Belichick and Brady. So I think, again, there's a lot of reasons. If you were to go with the under, I mean, I wouldn't blame you. I don't see where a lot of this lost production is going to be made up. But I also think, by the end of the year, it'll be like, okay, well, they easily did make it up with this guy, this guy, and this guy. So it'll be fun over the course of the season to find out how that's done, if it's done. Another thing I would maybe say is that even if you do bet the over and New England gets off to, say, a 2-2 start, 3-3, something like that, I wouldn't even be that worried, as they tend to adjust and get better as the season goes on. I know that's like a really broad, kind of general statement, but this has been the case pretty much every year. When you have a coach as smart as Belichick, you're able to adapt. He finds a lot of guys who maybe not necessarily would be. A lot of coaches wouldn't put guys in the same position as Belichick seems to put some of his guys in. He really preaches the flexibility. And yeah, it's long story short, I'm going to go over. So as we go through this, I think there's going to be a lot of teams where you can make an argument for both the over and the under. Buffalo definitely is a good example of that sort of a thing. First of all, it's a low total, 7. For those of you not familiar with an NFL schedule, that means 7 wins, 9 losses. So under 500 record. So it's not too hard to get more than 7 wins. And I think you can definitely make some arguments as to why they would be over that 7-win projection. Buffalo made a lot of additions over the course of the offseason. There's a few in particular I really liked, and they were along the offensive line. The big one is Mitch Morse at center. He was the center for the Chiefs last year. They were like one of the all-time great offenses in NFL history. This is the guy making the calls along the line for this offense. I think especially with a young quarterback, having a veteran center that can handle a lot of that is really good. Cody Ford, drafted out of Oklahoma in the 2nd round. Anybody who follows college football knows that Oklahoma puts up a ton of points every year. Granted, they've had 2 of the greatest college football quarterbacks of all time back to back, in Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield before that. But you got to have players along the offensive line that are going to hold blocks for these guys to do their magic. Cody Ford, definitely a strong piece of the offensive line in Oklahoma last year. When you're dealing with a young quarterback, I think having a strong offensive line is especially important. If you have a veteran guy in there, like somebody like a Brady or an Aaron Rodgers, who goes through their reads quick and releases the ball quickly, it's less of a big deal for your offensive line to hold up blocks as long. When you're dealing with a young quarterback that's still learning the game and learning how to go through your reads and your progressions, it's important to have a strong offensive line in front of him. Hopefully I'm not minimizing the impact of an offensive line, because it is super, super important for any team, but when you're dealing with young quarterbacks, I think it's especially important. So, great additions along the offensive line. They made a bunch of additions as well in terms of the targets for Josh Allen. This is the young quarterback we speak of. In terms of adding Cole Beasley, Frank Gore at running back, and John Brown. There's a deep threat coming from Baltimore. A lot of people actually really praised Buffalo for the additions at receiver, whereas I'm less high on it. John Brown, okay, yeah, sure, he is a deep threat, but he hasn't really been a guy who's gotten the numbers consistently. Uh, Cole Beasley is kind of like an above-average slot receiver, and something you're finding in the NFL, over the last 10 years is positions where the players are deemed kind of replaceable don't really seem to draw these big salaries when it comes to free agency or renegotiating new contracts with teams. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the fact that running backs are being, quite disrespected in that regard. Ezekiel Elliott's in a contract battle as we speak, and a lot of these, kind of higher end backs are not pulling in the big paydays like you might see like a defensive end pull in. And a lot of that is just because personnel people in the NFL have deemed these positions to be quite replaceable. So Cole Beasley's a good example of that. He didn't pull in a ton of money over the offseason, so I think it's kind of these average to above average slot receivers are almost a dime a dozen these days. So yeah, I mean, it's not like it's a bad addition. He's going to be, a good safety blanket, especially with the absence of a good pass-catching tight end in Buffalo. But I'm not quite as high on the additions myself as other people might be. Another big addition for the Bills was Ed Oliver in the first round of the draft. He plays defensive tackle. I think Ed Oliver is definitely like a very high potential. At the same time, a bit of a high bust potential. We'll see. The big thing with Ed Oliver is he's basically expecting to replace Kyle Williams in the lineup. So even if you do get a good season out of Ed Oliver, I think in terms of his first year production, probably going to be a wash with what you're getting from Kyle Williams last season. And of course, a few years ago he was having some big years. So yeah, definitely some big additions. I'm still going to go under. And the reason for that is the quarterback, Josh Allen. I know a lot of people are high on Josh Allen. He had a pretty interesting year. He was like one of the top rushing quarterbacks in the NFL last year, which wasn't really something that was expected out of him coming out of college. I don't think Josh Allen is ever going to be a star quarterback in the NFL. And the big reason is the completion percentage. One of the biggest indicators of success for quarterbacks when you're making the transition from college to pro is completion percentage. And Josh Allen has never had a high completion percentage. In fact, I believe he was the lowest completion percentage amongst quarterbacks who started more than 8 games last year. It was 52 and change. That's not going to get it done. When you watch Josh Allen, I think he does pass the eye test. A lot of it is his command of the huddle and his moxie. Like, this guy is not afraid to take a hit. He's not afraid to stick his neck out there to try and pick a couple yards for first down. And he is not afraid to sling it. This guy's a gunslinger. I think a lot of the philosophy behind why people think Buffalo might be good this year is because they're going to have a deep ball quarterback in Josh Allen, and they've added a deep ball receiver, John Brown. I'm personally, I'm not buying it. I don't think Josh Allen's ever going to be a star quarterback. I think 2 to 3 years from now, well, I guess he's in the second year of his rookie deal. I bet 2 years from now, they're not going to pick up his 5th-year option, and it's going to be the same old story for Buffalo ever since Jim Kelly retired. They're going to be looking for a quarterback. Final verdict, Buffalo 7 wins, under. Okay, so there's a lot to unpackage with the New York Jets. There's some good, there's some bad. So we'll start with the good. They were able to draft Quinnen Williams in the first round. Quinnen Williams, a lot of draft experts had Quinnen Williams as the highest graded player in the 2019 NFL draft. This guy projects to be a stud in the middle of the defensive line. And quite frankly, I agree. I watched a lot of his career at Alabama, and I do think that he's going to be everything that the experts think he's going to be. Le'Veon Bell, another big addition. The Jets are kind of similar to Buffalo in that they've got a second-year quarterback, Sam Darnold out of USC, first year, like a rookie last year. Kind of middling stats. I'm going to get into Darnold in a little bit more depth in a minute, but in terms of helping Darnold, I think Le'Veon Bell is like a big upgrade. One of the reasons he held out with Pittsburgh, and this actually ties into what I was talking about earlier with running backs being disrespected a little bit when it comes time to negotiate new contracts. I'm sure a lot of you know Le'Veon Bell held out for an entire year. One of the reasons that I think Le'Veon Bell probably deserves a bit more money than some of these guys is that he is a true three-down back. Basically, that means he's going to be the first guy you call in a running situation at running back, and he's going to be the first guy you call in a passing situation at running back. Le'Veon Bell wanted to be paid like a number one running back and a number two receiver, which, is pretty steep pay scale, to be completely honest. But his stats kind of do support that. I mean, he can line up as a receiver. He can run routes. Obviously, can run routes out of the backfield. He could play all three downs. Big assistance to a young quarterback, having a running back who can catch, and of course having a running back who can run, because that's going to have your run game set up your play action and your passing and what have you. So big addition there. A lot of experts, analysts were shitting on C.J. Mosley signing with the Jets, $17 million a year. That's a lot of money. C.J. Mosley is a player I really like, and I think he's going to help shore up that defense immediately. And yeah, I think it is a high price tag, but of course we're looking at this in the context of 1 year and where the Jets are going to win more than 7.5 games. So in that context, I think C.J. Mosley is a big add, and it's going to help. And that's a guy that's going to help them maybe get over that 8-win mark. I'll have my final prediction about that in a minute. So there's a few reasons why you could definitely see the Jets being better this year. When you look at the bad side of things, there's a very sloppy situation in the front office. The Jets hired a new coach, Adam Gase. He was with Miami for 3 seasons, had 1 winning season, 2 losing, and now he's a first-year coach with the Jets. And not long after Adam Gase was hired, and after the draft even, the Jets fired their GM, and there's been a lot of rumors floating around that there was, some discontent between Gase and the GM. And there's been a lot of rumors floating around that maybe the GM made some moves that Gase didn't approve of, like the Le'Veon Bell signing. So you've got a coach who has not coached a single game for this team and is already kind of embattled in the press. So that's bad. I find there could certainly be a lot of trickle-down effect when there's disharmony in the front office. That kind of trickles down to the field. And the big reason that I'm going to go under on this is Sam Darnold and the relationship between Sam Darnold and Adam Gase. Again, Sam Darnold, second-year quarterback, drafted out of USC. We've seen a lot of big-time quarterback busts who went in the first round, drafted from USC over the last 10 years. I personally, if I had this channel a year ago, I actually would have been preaching that Sam Darnold was going to suck and be a bust. The big reason for that is the turnovers. This guy had a lot of turnovers at USC. He's a big, tall, square jaw, good-looking blonde guy. He certainly looks the part back there. And, I think that's one of the reasons that he went as high as he did in the draft. But when you start going through the numbers, this guy was turned the ball over a lot at USC. And when you look at his stats last year, I don't have them right in front of me, but I believe it was 17 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. Granted, he's a rookie. 15 interceptions is bad. And this guy, like I said, in college, has a history of turning the ball over. So, although, you can, with the proper coaching and development, you can cut down on those turnovers. I don't think it's necessarily a hopeless situation for Darnold, but you're dealing with a coach in Adam Gase who, A, already has, some problems, perhaps, with the front office and some of his players. B, had a hard time developing Ryan Tannehill in Miami. His 3 years there. If you look at Tannehill's stats, I know there were some injury issues, but he's going to Tennessee to be a backup to Marcus Mariota. So this is a first-round pick that really didn't develop, and a lot of that was under Gase's watch. So now we've got another young quarterback who you're, hoping is going to make that second-year leap, and he's under a coach that I just don't really see as being the guy who's going to mentor Darnold into being an elite quarterback. I do think that Darnold has a better chance than Josh Allen of, being a star or even a borderline star, but I don't think it's going to be this year, and I certainly don't think it's going to be with this coach. And until I see, Sam Darnold have a year where his turnovers are low in relation to other starting quarterbacks across the league, I don't think we can justify putting Darnold as somebody who's going to be in that upper tier. So, overall, quarterback play is paramount in the NFL. It's number one. And if you're not getting it, there's a pretty good chance that, you're not going to have a successful season or a successful team. So in spite of the additions, I'm going to go with 7.5 wins for the Jets under. Again. Just a quick programming note, I guess. I thought I was going to do the AFC East and the AFC North in this episode. I'm kind of editing as I go here, and just noticing it's running a bit long. I'm only doing the one division, and we're going to be over, well over a half hour. I don't think it's reasonable to expect anybody to stare at this face for, any longer than that. So I'm just going to cap it with the AFC East today, and then I'll get into the AFC North in my next video. So with that, we're to the Miami Dolphins. Over under 5 wins. So I'm going to make an argument for the over, and looking at it right out of the gate, 5 wins is quite low. So, it really wouldn't take that much to get over 5 wins. You want a more reasoning, I guess. Well, Adam Gase isn't there anymore, so I guess that's good. So yeah, they replaced Adam Gase with Brian Flores, who is a Belichick guy, actually. Was New England last year. So If you have a look at Belichick's coaching tree, surprisingly, it's actually not all that successful. You would think apprenticing under the greatest coach of all time would lead you to having success on your own, but actually not the case at all. There's examples all through time: Charlie Weiss, Romeo Crennel, Josh McDaniels was just like a disaster. So yeah, just it doesn't really seem to translate to success. So this is the latest experiment, I guess. So maybe this one will go right. In terms of reasons why this will be under, there are a lot of reasons. I actually have the Dolphins' current depth chart in front of me, and there's nothing on here that excites me. There's nothing that would lead me to believe that we're going to see some new star players come out of this roster. Really devoid of high-end talent. I don't mind Xavier Howard. I like Minkah Fitzpatrick coming out of Alabama, but he's not even listed as a starter. So when you go through, the offense, we've got number one receiver Kenny Stills. He runs one route, and that's the 9 or the go route. Basically a straight line. He's not really much of a route runner. So although he can take the top off a defense, he's not someone you're going to be looking to move the chains on a 3rd and 6 or anything like that. We've got Devontae Parker. His career has been, pretty start and stop. Nothing really to like there. Albert Wilson. I wouldn't have him as a starting wide receiver on 25 of the 32 teams in the NFL, I'd say. Dwayne Allen as a starting tight end. This is not a lot to like here. Look at the quarterback position for Miami, and there's two options: Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen. I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick needs much of an introduction. I think most people know who he is. He had that, of course, incredible hot streak at the beginning of the year last year for Tampa. And then, of course, fell off a bit and ended up, being replaced by Jameis Winston. Ryan Fitzpatrick is like in his mid-30s, and he has a history of being wildly, wildly inconsistent. So I guess if you were to win this starting job and get extremely hot for 6 games, maybe bang out 3 of your 5 wins there, and then you only need to win 2 of your last 10 to match 5 wins. That's a push. So yeah, that's not great. And then we've got, I'll stick with Fitzpatrick for a second. Wildly, wildly, wildly inconsistent. Going back to his days in Buffalo, where he ended up winning the starting job and had like this incredible 6-game run for Buffalo. They even beat New England one of those 6 games. And then signed a big contract and ended up being like a disaster that set the Bills franchise back like 5 years. Ryan Fitzpatrick is not a starting option. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a guy kind of like Nick Foles in Philadelphia, and come off the bench if your starting quarterback gets hurt, and he might get hot. But it seems defenses, figure him out after, a certain amount of film, and he turns into a turnover machine. So although you will see, good from Fitzpatrick, you're going to see a lot of bad too, and there's more than enough tape to support this theory, and more than enough statistical evidence to support this theory. So Ryan Fitzpatrick is not going to take you to the playoffs. He's not going to win you 7 games, let alone more than 5. Josh Rosen, interesting case. If you look at this in a vacuum, you see a guy who did have quite a bad rookie season in Arizona and was jettisoned after 1 year. Kind of some unique circumstances leading to that, as Arizona had a bit of an overhaul, a new coach in Cliff Kingsbury, and had the #1 overall pick in the draft, which Kingsbury used to, of course, take Kyler Murray. So, a lot of times in a similar situation, you would run Rosen back and give him another year. But I think you can justify Arizona wanting to go with Kyler Murray. Him and Kingsbury, have a bit of a history. And Kingsbury thinks Murray is like the perfect quarterback to run his air raid offense, which of course I'll get into when we get to the NFC West. So that's going to be an interesting little science experiment, but I digress. So Josh Rosen, odd man out in Arizona, and Miami didn't really have to give up that much to get him. I think it was like a 3rd and a 5th rounder, something like that. And Josh Rosen, of course, was the 10th overall pick in the 2018 draft. So you're looking at, some pretty high draft stock. So a best case scenario for Miami is that Rosen wins this quarterback job and runs with it. And, I suppose, again, you're looking at a quarterback to make a second-year leap, and I suppose it is possible. But I don't see the talent around him to help him succeed. You've got Kenyon Drake is projected to be the starting running back. He couldn't beat Frank Gore out for the starting running back position last year. So I don't really see a ton of upside there. We've discussed the receivers. I don't really like the receiving core they've got there. So I don't really see a lot of help for Josh Rosen. And the second reason why I think it's going to be tough for him is because you're putting him in a brand new system. So essentially, everything that he learned in his first year in the NFL with Arizona is pulled away. He's got to learn a new offense. He has to learn all new terminology and vernacular. He's, of course, got to work with a whole new offensive line, a whole new set of receivers, a new coach, a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterbacks coach. You're basically starting from scratch. It's like a second rookie season, or, as close as you're ever going to see to a player kind of having a second rookie season in the NFL. So although I think this Rosen thing could pay off, I mean, if they start him 16 games, maybe towards the end of the season you might start to see an upward trajectory, and maybe you can make some projections in terms of him being a good starting option for Miami in 2020. But again, we're looking at things in the context of this 1 year, and when you look at the roster, you look at the coach with an unproven track record, and you look at the quarterback situation. Although 5 wins is, not very high, I personally don't think you can justify it. It's the NFL, so with the talent margin being as thin as it is, if Fitzpatrick starts week 1, maybe, has a good performance, and, the players start to believe that, they're part of something here, then maybe, they could go on a little run and exceed that, maybe have like a 6-10 season. But I truly, truly believe that the Miami Dolphins are going to be the worst team in the NFL this year, and I think they will hold the #1 pick in the draft next year. And, that's probably where they're going to end up with their quarterback of the future, unfortunately, for Mr. Rosen. And, Ryan Fitzpatrick is quite old, so he's a lot closer to retirement than he is to being a legitimate starting option for any team in the NFL. 5 wins, yeah, you've got to go again. I mean, everybody other than New England has big-time questions at the quarterback position. And if you don't get quarterback play in the NFL, chances are, unless you've got the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, you're not going to win games. So, 5 wins, Miami, under. So that's it for the AFC East. Looks like once again it's going to be the Patriots and a bunch of shit. So, not too much new there. Although hopefully I'm wrong. I mean, being from Toronto, I definitely do like the Bills. They're not my top team, but I would put them in the top 3. So it'd be nice to see them have a good year. There's definitely a situation where the Jets could do well, and I don't really, feel so good about Miami, but maybe I'll just be really wrong. And this actually marks the end of the first episode of Idiot versus Point Spread. So yeah, it seemed to go pretty well. It would be wicked if anybody who makes it to the end of this video. First of all, thanks for sticking through it, putting up with this ugly mug. And yeah, leave a like or dislike, and leave a comment for me. Let me know what you guys think of the AFC East. And let me know what you think of the over-under for the win totals for each team, and even, let me know why. If I get a cool comment, maybe I'll read it in the next show. So, yeah, I'll be back soon. I'm going to go next at the AFC North, so keep an eye out for that. And, yeah, thanks again for tuning in. This is The Idiot, and this has been Idiot versus Point Spread. See you later.